As someone I look up to once said, you are not going to become rich making furniture. And while that's totally cool considering the lifestyle that we get to lead with a career like this, you still need to put food on the table. And so far in my first year as a full-time furniture maker, that is a hurdle that I am yet to clear. But then I was introduced to white boxes.
Traditional melamine, it has a lot of great uses.
Which you're going to see in every single kitchen, bathroom and laundry pretty much in existence.
And the nice thing I like about it is there's no painting, there's nothing to do, it's all ready to go.
You may have heard this term in furniture making. It refers to cabinets made with white melamine on either particle board or MDF. It's in all our homes, and there's even an official job title assigned to the person who makes these cabinets. I've heard time and time again that if you want to be profitable in this industry, you need to be screwing together white boxes. So the job was two relatively simple vanities made mostly out of melamine for a new house build. This Townsvillian client contacted someone down in Melbourne, confirmed the design cost, etc., but then realized the cost of the freight to get it all the way across Australia up to Townsville was just going to blow out the budget. So Paul, who listens to the Shop Stall podcast, was like,
hey, I know a guy in Townsville who can help you out.
And the job came my way. And just quick, I want to say a huge shout out to Paul from Timber Assemblies. Not only did he get me the job, but he also helped me out with the many questions I had along the way. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Coming from the hostile private corporate sector to this, a community of people looking out for each other, it's just amazing. So I contacted the client, we both agreed on the design and the costs, and we were away. The deadline was Christmas of 2024. Okay, the deposit has come through. That's a 50% deposit. So with that money, I can now start buying materials and I can officially get this project underway. With the money locked in, I ordered two things: Tasmanian oak veneer plywood and moisture-resistant melamine. The plywood would arrive later on, but first up,
the melamine sheets are ready for pickup. I'm off to get them now.
One of the things I had to work through with this project was expanding my contacts. Until this point, I'd never ordered these types of materials in this way. And while now on the other end of the project, I've no problem contacting these people, in the beginning, working out how to deal with and talk to those suppliers was a new experience for me.
Oh, I understand why people hire people. This stuff's heavy.
Then my new track saw arrived. Without a doubt, the best tool I've bought in years, but let me explain why I got it now.
I've been pretty much just sitting in front of my computer, researching, calling people. It's led me down a path that started at, I would get a third-party company to build out the internals for me, the melamine carcass. That's what Paul does down in Melbourne. I think he's got a lot more access to organizations and companies that do that. So instead, I'm going to be getting myself a track saw and I'm just going to be cutting the melamine parts myself. My main concern, and the reason I didn't want to go this route, is I'm going to be using a track saw which I've never used before, so I'm going to be learning at the same time. And I'm also never in a million years going to be as accurate as a CNC. And because this is a vanity that's built to a particular size so that all the different parties that I'm engaging with, plumber, builder, etc., are all expecting it to be a specific size, I really want this to be as pinpoint as possible. But at the end of the day, I'm going to back myself. It's just cutting up some melamine panels, and at the end of this video, we will find out if I was successful.
This was my first time working with melamine at this level, and I can see now why it's such an attractive option for furniture makers. The material's relatively cheap, and the way you process it is so simple. You just draw the line where you want to cut, and you cut. So because of that, it makes quoting and, more importantly, defining your profit margins so much easier.
So Paul messaged me earlier to try something that will help me combat these slightly ragged edges. Do one very shallow pass, only a few millimeters, and then do the final pass. So as that blade is cutting, instead of the blade coming up through, straight up through the melamine, you have it coming up at an angle, and that might make this better. So I'll give that a go now.
Next up, I had to cut a notch into the melamine to run the rails across the front of the cabinet. I tried using my big bandsaw, but that was way too aggressive and just chipped the shit out of the melamine. Next up, I tried using my multi-tool, but I am not happy with both of these methods. There's just too much risk involved. I mean, I may do it and it'll be fine, but there's also a good chance that I'll get it wrong. And because I've paid for all of this material, any mistake is going to cost me. There's got to be a more foolproof way of making this cut. So I'm going to leave this here for today. I'll think about this overnight and hopefully come back tomorrow
with a better solution. All right, it's the next day, and here is the final jig to make this cut. I spoke to Paul about this, and he mentioned the router, which I didn't even think was possible. I just assumed it would destroy the melamine finish, but it actually leaves a beautifully clean cut, and it's repeatable. So now I'm confident to move on. So now I can cut the actual pieces. For the last 8 or 9 years, I've only had one drill. And so that means anytime I want to change operation, I have to change the bit every time. And I've gotten used to working like that. Over the last 3 or 4 months, I've got myself 2 new drill drivers. So while I'm putting this vanity together behind me, being able to have each drill have the bit that I want, and I can just grab the drill and do the operation, it feels so opulent, but man, it is so cool to work like this. This is where I'm going to leave the cabinet for now. The next thing is going to be to edge band some of these edges. I don't have the edge banding yet. I've still got to go get that, but that'll be next. But what that does mean is I get to open this up. Some more firsts for me here. This is the first time I'm using veneered plywood, and it's the first time I'm using birch plywood. The main reason I've opened this plywood up now is I need to match the solid timber to this. Now up the road, my timber supplier has Vic Ash, not Tasmanian oak, and that's where I want to get my timber from. So I'll actually, I've got some around the shop somewhere. We can have a look at this. Yeah, there it is. Okay, so this is the timber from up the road. This is Vic Ash, and you can see how it has that pale straw color similar to this. It's a bit darker, but I'm okay with that. What I was concerned about is this. This is Tasmanian oak, and you can see that pinkness in it. That's completely different to this. I've got another piece here. You can see it's very, very similar. So I'll be able to get the timber up the road. That is a very good outcome. I'm putting the cover back on, because I'm not going to be working on this for the next few days.
Before I start cutting into the plywood though, I'm going to cut up this piece of Vic Ash that I'm using for the legs. I want to get it cut into rough dimensions first, so if it's going to warp or twist or cup or whatever, it can do that while I'm working on these panels. I don't think it will. It's a pretty stable material, but rather give it a chance to do that before I attach it to the plywood. I went ahead and finished up the second cabinet off camera. It was the same process, so I didn't bother filming it. But what is interesting is this took me half a day. Now I know to the veteran furniture makers out there, that's probably not that impressive, but this one, the first one, took me a day and a half. So to drop my time, drop the hours that I spent on it by that much, I'm pretty stoked. Then it was onto the plywood side panels. You may have noticed earlier I was piling up the melamine when I was making some cuts, and now I'm doing the same thing with the plywood. Not all the parts need to be exactly perfectly cut to their measurements. But in some cases like this, what's really important is that the two side panels are perfect mirrors of each other. Then mid-cut, I had this sinking feeling. Well, it's pretty late in the game for it, so I guess I shouldn't complain. But I've just made my first mistake. I was looking at it and just thinking something is not right. Came back to the drawing and I figured it out. So that 420 across there, I was just looking at it and thinking, that looks very narrow. Measured it against the carcass and did the math and it didn't add up. And what I've done wrong is those legs, I've milled them to 30 by 30. It's supposed to be 30 by 40. So if I want to salvage those legs, I'm going to need to take 10 mil off of that last piece behind me and glue that onto each one of these legs. So I fixed up the legs, I added on that extra material, and then I got to adding them to the side panels.
So this is one of the first side panels up in glue. I've got one more here which is ready for glue, and then I've still got to mill these down to do the other two sides. I just popped into Lincoln Century, so I've got all of the drawer slides and hardware to get these drawers made. Now from here I can actually figure out what timber I need, because I've never worked these before, so I don't actually know what goes into assembling them. I don't know if I'm like missing some of the instructions. I think this is all that there was in the box, but this doesn't explain anything. Yeah, no, that's all the instructions. All right, yep, got all the pieces. Now, those pieces, I don't know what size to cut those to. The problem is I still don't have any indication of the cavity minus XYZ, that's the length of your timber. Because I don't know, based on the width of this, how wide I need my drawer to be. And now it's got some drawings here that look like this could be what I'm needing. Okay, so I've finally figured out all of the dimensions and what they mean on this, and more importantly, I've figured out how to interpret it. And there was a really simple mistake that I was making. So this LW-75 is not actually -75, it's -75. So what it's saying is the width, I don't know what L stands for, but the width of your bottom piece needs to subtract 75 mil. So whatever the width of your internal space is, minus 75 mil, and that's your bottom panel. Same goes for the back piece. In my mind, it was saying LW needs to be 75 millimeters, and I didn't have any clue what that meant. I got a bit of help online for this. Thank you to everyone who showed me the light. Now I can get to cutting the pieces and start assembling these drawers. Because I was prioritizing accuracy over efficiency, because this was the first time I was building this design, I decided to build one drawer first to test the process. It would have been way more efficient to cut all of the panels for all of the drawers and then assemble them all together. But because this was my first time doing it, I wanted to make sure I was doing it right before accidentally stuffing them all up. Okay, that's the first panel done. That's the bottom panel. I've still got to do the back panel, but I've just had an email from the client. The plumber needs some specs to start doing what they got to do on site. So I'm going to jump into SketchUp now, make some changes to the drawing, and then send this through with some measurements on it to the client. Okay, hopefully that's everything the plumber and builder need, but they have my number now in case they need anything more. Okay, here we go, moment of truth. Have I cut these panels to the right size? I don't really know how to test this. Just chuck it on. Feel free to laugh at me, all you cabinet makers out there. Sure, I'm making this look way more difficult than it needs to be. How do you get this thing on? What the How's it gonna get under there if I can't get it under there because it keeps... Oh, it's because the drawer's backwards, you idiot. Trust me, I'll be your cabinet maker. All right, that's good. So stoked that works. I
cannot overstate how satisfying it was just watching that drawer slide into the cabinet like that. This is a bit of a long-running saga, and I go into the history of why it was such a big deal for me over on my second channel, which I'll link to.
Oh boy, what a day. So much progress, so much progress. I've figured out the drilling hole locations. There's two holes that go in here, and then there's one here. So I've figured out what that is. So now I can apply that to the real drawer faces, not these, because this is just a sacrificial one that I was using to test with. But it's all working.
After that, I was back up the road to buy some more Vic Ash to start work on the drawer fronts. With the boards back in the shop, I could start figuring out how I wanted to glue these up to get the best grain match. While the glue was drying, I was assembling the drawers.
I'm having a little trouble on this basically final step. I mean, I'm so close to finishing this, but this last one's really got me scratching my head. What I need to do here is make sure a few things happen all at once. I know how to attach this to the drawer. What I need to get my head around though is making sure that the gap between the top of this drawer and the bottom of this drawer is the same as the gap between the top of this drawer and the countertop. I need to make sure that that gap is only on top of this piece of timber that's going to run through here. So I've been trying to think of how to do this. You can see I had a story stick on the side to figure it out as well. But I think what I'm going to do instead is just use the drawings on the document and then take all the measurements of the cabinet as is over to SketchUp, draw it up, and then I can play around. All right, those measurements are now transferred to here. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 for the bottom shelves, for the bottom drawer fronts, and the top drawer fronts.
With that last piece of the puzzle taken care of, I could get all of the pieces cut to size and start marking out for drilling. At that stage, all the individual parts were made, so it was time to bring them all together. This moment gave me a good understanding of the process and how to optimize it next time. I know all the parts involved and they can all be built separately, so next time I can use my time more efficiently, working on one section if I get held up by another.
All right, I've just got off the phone with the builder and he's given me somewhere that I can deliver the vanities to store them. Unfortunately, the tiling isn't done yet, so they can't be installed, which is a bit of a bummer because I'm not gonna be able to see them in place, but at least I still get to deliver before the deadline of Christmas. It is delivery day today. There's the big vanity, the smaller one. Here's all the drawers ready to go. It is 1,000,000 degrees out there, so these are only going into the trailer just before I need to get going. All right, delivery done. Everything went well. Builder looks happy. I'm happy. It's all good.
Something I've heard from a lot of other furniture makers is that there's money in white boxes. So from the get-go, I was hoping to make this my first truly profitable job as a full-time furniture maker. Nothing exceptional, just enough to cover my expenses and time, which is still something I haven't been able to do in this first year. Okay, with the commission delivered, let's find out if I made a profit or a loss on this job. I spent 13 days on this project, and it's interesting to see the trend, how I spent my time. In the early days, I was collecting material and breaking it down, all very low pressure jobs. Then in the middle, where I had to start making a lot of big decisions, I slowed down my progress, and you can see how much shorter my days became. But then in the end, in that last final push, I started to work longer days because I started running out of time. The expense to income ratio on this job is really good, and this is what I want to be aiming for going forward. In total, I worked 28.18 hours on this project. Unlike previous projects where I worked out how long I thought it would take to build and then quoted on that, this time I looked at the industry expectations for a project like this. Talking to a few other furniture makers, they could all say with pretty high accuracy how long this project would take, and they all said around 3 grand is what they would charge per vanity. So for this video, we can't look at how close my worked hours were to my quoted hours, but we can still work out if I made a profit on the time that I spent. So with a profit of around $3,600 and having worked 29 hours, that's including delivery, that means that I was paid around $125 per hour, which is right on the mark. I am so stoked with that. In the last video, there were a lot of questions and comments, some nicer than others, about was I including my overheads and expenses, my annual expenses, into the expected hourly rate that I was hoping for? And the answer is yes. So based on the amount of time that I can work per week, I need to make at least $40 per hour to cover my overheads. Anything after that is money for food and reinvesting back into the business. So is there money in white boxes? Absolutely yes. This was my first truly profitable job for the year and my entire career. It's taken a while to get here, but boy, I'm stoked I finally cracked that nut. Now I just need to make sure I can continue this into 2025. My name is Robin Lewis. Thank you very much for watching. Take care, everyone, and I'll see you in the next one. And with the very done. But because of the, wow, why can't I get this line?